And welcome everybody. I'm excited to be back again. Today, our topic, we're going to talk about some principles of secure functioning. The idea of secure functioning, it's all over the place in marriage therapy. The guy who calls it secure functioning though is Stan Tatkin. And I've been training with his organization. So I'm going to borrow some of his concepts. We're going to elaborate a little bit more on those, especially in how I see these concepts get misunderstood for a lot of addicts and partners in recovery. So the three principles of secure functioning that we are going to talk about today are fairness, justice, and security. Um, for those of you who aren't familiar with what secure functioning is, it's basically regardless of how a couple feel about each other or with each other, they behave correctly with each other. So, for example, these principles, we always treat each other with fairness. Justice is the center of our relationship, and we're sensitive to each other. Those are examples of principles that dictate right behavior in relationships. And like with everything else we talk about in this webinar, this isn't just for romantic relationships. This has a lot of application, I think, in professional relationships, relationships with children, even among your recovery support communities. So the idea for this actually came from, I run a weekly men's group, and this last quarter we've been talking about why it's hard to collaborate in relationships. And I put up a poster board with all of the secure functioning principles on there. And one of the guys pointed out, he said, it seems like fairness, justice, and sensitivity don't work without each other. If you get one of those wrong, you kind of can't do the other ones. And the group talked about that, and they had some really good questions around, what these different things mean, and they hashed it out. So another part of what I'm going to be sharing tonight is this collective wisdom of this men's group, who's been working together for almost 2 years now, which I thought was extremely applicable to addiction recovery. So first, we're going to start with looking at what the definitions for these are. Like many things that have to do with relationships, these can be defined in 50 different ways. The main distinction I'm going to make right now is the immature definition we can have of these words and how that gets in the way of relationships, and the mature definition of these words that recovery encourages us towards. So let's take fairness. Um, uh, my kids clean my office, and I pay them a little bit for it. So last Saturday, I had the kids here at the office, and we were doing a bit of a deep clean. And my 11-year-old, he has a little more of an economic mind. So he gets the whole, I put in labor, I get money, I get stuff I want, like this works. So very rarely when he agrees to do a job that he's paid for, does he complain, or he's a good employee. My 8-year-old doesn't quite have that grasp yet. So we're here cleaning, and he was upset that I was sitting out in the waiting room while they were cleaning the offices, and I was catching up on some paperwork, returning some emails, and he said, "Dad, this isn't fair that we're here cleaning while you're just sitting on your butt. Like, why don't you get up and do something?" And my first thought was, where has he heard that before? And my second thought was, that's not really the thing here. Like, I'm paying you to do this, so I don't have to. And so I told him just that. I said, well, you're getting paid for this, and so this is your job. Right now, I'm doing my job, and he's getting huffier and huffier. And I asked him, while his brother was vacuuming one of the offices, I asked him to go in and move the chairs on wheels so that he could vacuum easily. And he comes in, and I see him shove a wheeled chair across the office. And I said, buddy, if I wasn't your dad and you were just my employee, you'd be fired and you wouldn't be welcome to work here anymore. And he storms out the front door and, goes out in the parking lot. And I followed him a couple minutes later. I brought him back in, and I said, let's talk about this. I said, when somebody asks you to do a job, you have an agreement with each other. I said, my agreement towards you is, number one, I'm going to pay you for your labor. Number two is I'm going to set you up to be successful. So I've provided all the supplies you need to complete the job in a satisfactory manner, and I will teach you how to do anything you don't know how to do. That's on my agreement with you. What's your agreement with me? And he said, "Ugh, I have to be happy when I'm at work." And I said, no, you don't have to be happy when you're at work. Um, in fact, I've worked a lot of jobs that I've hated, and that's just fine. I said, you have to get the job done that you've agreed to do, and you can't make my life more complicated because I've given you a job. So when you shove my chairs across the room into other furniture, like, you might break things, and that would be an inconvenience for me. I'd have to spend more money. I'd have to spend time to replace it. Like, so don't make my life harder. That's not why I hired you. And surprisingly, to my 8-year-old's credit, he got it. And he said, "Well, can I still be paid if I finish strong today?" And I said, "Absolutely. Like, let's have a do-over." So what we were working there with was a concept of fairness. The 8-year-old concept of fairness actually had more to do with equality, which is, we do the same. We put in the same amount of effort. It looks the same. I don't carry any more than you carry. And that is fairness. There are a lot of areas of life that I think we need to go on that definition of fairness. The problem in a committed, intimate relationship, when we go on that definition of fairness, is the type of work that we do and the roles that we play can often be so different that they're actually not comparable. It's really hard to compare them one-to-one. So the mature view, or the adult view of relationships, is, do I feel used or mistreated in this relationship? That's what my son was telling me, is, this isn't fair, you're using me. And so the way that I went about resolving that with him was to check, am I not doing my job towards you? Because if I'm not, you need to let me know, and I need to do better. Are you doing your job towards me? No, I'm not. I need to get in alignment. So this is really, really easy, I would say, especially for addicts in recovery. We often feel misused. We often feel mistreated, and we probably have a long history of that. The problem becomes when that becomes our only way of gauging if the relationship is working, is if I feel good here. Because most of the time, I shouldn't say most of the time, but there's a lot of time in relationships where we don't feel good. It's not going well. It's really difficult. So the follow-up question to that, number one, is, do I feel mistreated in this relationship? Number two is, what am I doing to make sure my partner isn't being used or mistreated? That's what fairness is in an adult relationship. Is I make sure that we have a give to get system going on. And that doesn't mean the only reason why we do things is because we want something from our partner, but we realize that everything someone does in relation to the relationship we're in, it's giving to the relationship, it's giving to both of us. So if I'm receiving from the relationship, I better be giving as well. The second concept of justice, the immature view here, is that eye for an eye idea. That really is justice. Justice is a restorative force. It's a restorative idea. If I take, it's taken from me, or if I take it, I give it back. If I hurt, I pay restitution. The more nuanced, I would say, more adult view of justice is, it's about restoring balance. It's not about exacting punishment or exacting revenge. One of the best decisions I've ever made on Instagram is to only follow accounts that show positive, creative things in the world. I don't follow a lot of individuals. So every now and then in my feed, I'd say a couple times a week, there's some story about, this young kid held this person up at gunpoint, and guess who was there the day he was released from prison? The person he held up at gunpoint. That is more of a restorative justice. That's more of a balance restoring. It's not about when somebody hurts us that they rot in a prison cell until they get the message, unless that's what, unless we need to distance ourselves from that, and that's what needs to happen. It's about restoring balance, making amends. If you broke it, you fix it. And here's a little hint for relationship success. If you're in a relationship, you will be breaking things. You have broken things. You probably broke 3 things this morning in the relationship. So it's not a matter of looking at who breaks things most. We're not looking at a cumulative justice. Well, you broke more things than me, so in the end, you owe me and I don't owe you. It's everything I break, I fix. Every time I'm out of attunement, I come back into attunement. Now, this nestles in, as one of the guys in my group pointed out, this nestles in with fairness. He used the example of, sometimes I come home and I'll say to my spouse, you didn't get XYZ done today. Why didn't you? and I'll be upset because I thought that's what we'd agreed on they would be doing that day, or I needed it done. He said, that's one of the biggest things my spouse and I fight about is one or the other of us saying, you're not holding up your end of the bargain. He said, I'm beginning to see from this fairness and justice thing that I probably need to ask more, how was your day? I need to start there and understand what the context was. Because if I jump in with what I think is fair, I can do a lot of injustice to my spouse. I'm not giving the benefit of the doubt. I'm not leaving room for them, to have variance in their life and for me not to be the center of their universe all the time. And he said, so if I do that with my spouse, the way the justice is restored is saying, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have made that assumption. That was wrong of me. Will you give me a do-over? And a spouse's possible response, again, to keep justice and fairness at the heart of the relationship, is to tell the truth about how they feel. No, I can't give you a do-over. You do that all the time. I'm upset. You're gonna have to give me space. Or, yeah, you got it. Thank you for catching that. Either way, justice at the center of the relationship allows fairness to be restored when the relationship is unfair. And most relationships have a tendency to be unfair because there's power differentials, there's perspective differentials. We don't see and experience things the same way. So we don't always end up with what we need. The last part is sensitivity. Now, the immature view of this is that sensitivity is just coddling, it's just catering, it's making things easy. I don't want you to have a hard time. The more mature, the more developed view of this is, who are you really? Who am I actually in a relationship with? What hurts do you carry? And how do I best help you heal? Relationships are not necessarily about helping each other avoid the hurts. Because if we're doing that, we're just creating a relationship that's not really about who we each are. It's about who I want you to be. So if I know you have a really hard time with, let's say, abandonment, well, I just never leave your side. While that's maybe sensitive in the short term, in the long term, it doesn't facilitate any growth. It keeps our partner in that prison, and we contribute to that. So sensitivity is knowing who our partner is, the hurts that they carry, and what they want to do about it. Because that's how we help our partner heal. It's not us saying, here's what I think would be best for you. It's getting collaborative with our partner and saying, this looks like this hurts a lot, and this looks like, a place that you're trapped. Do you want to do something different about this? Yes. How do I help with that? What do you need from me? And you see how that comes back to fairness and justice. If I have who my partner is, how they hurt, and how I can help them heal at the center of what I'm doing, if I'm off base with my partner, it's likely because I've forgotten some aspect of that. I've forgotten what the wound is. I've treated you unfairly because I assumed that it would be easier for you to be honest with me, not recognizing that true honesty about feelings was punished in your family. So honesty is a scary thing. You struggle with that. Recognizing, in the case of an addict who has betrayed, I've really, really hurt you. And so it's not unreasonable for you to be suspicious of me. It's not unreasonable for you to wonder if I'm committed, because there was a time where that wasn't clear and maybe I wasn't committed. So if I'm remembering who you are, I can treat you fairly. I can know the best path to restore justice. And out of that, we have a relationship that's actually about the two people in the relationship doing what works for each other, not about two people doing what they think is right. There's a lot of conflict in our relationships that comes from, well, I'm doing what I think is right. We aren't married to a lawnmower. It's not about putting the right kind of fuel and oil in it. We're married to a living, breathing, or in a relationship with a living, breathing human being. Those needs change. So the call to action I would put here is, on each one of those, fairness, justice, and sensitivity, notice any of your immature views or immature behaviors around that and get curious. Talk with a sponsor or therapist around that. See if you can get yourself a little more of a robust, mature view on that, so that you can actually use these in a way that will help you and help your partner have a better relationship. And that is fairness, justice, and sensitivity.
Thank you. Thanks. You have the most fascinating topics. Type your questions into the Q&A about this or anything else to do with relationships. And we also have one that came on our YouTube channel that I want to ask. But I mean, this kind of strikes me as I mean, you mentioned this goes to every relationship, but I mean, you said at one point, who are you really in relationship to sensitivity? And I think a lot of this kind of boils down to who are you really? Who am I really? You know, what's your role? What's my role? What's our role? Who are we really? And if we're clear on that, things like all of these, which do, I agree with you guys, they totally go together. You know, you can't have one without the other, but all of them are easy if we're committed to what's real as opposed to smoothing it over or making it easier. I'm kind of reminded of the concept of the too good parent, where I never grow because my parent does everything for me, basically. Do you kind of see some of that, or?
Yeah. It amazes me when I'm working with couples. I would say probably 7 out of 10 times, if I can get them to really be honest with each other and show each other, what hurts, and what's not working. 7 out of 10 times, they actually get really intuitive and helpful with each other. Relationships don't spring from an ideal of how it's supposed to be or who my partner is supposed to be. They spring from actually being with a person. So, I take my daughter, for example, right now. Our relationship is really, really easy. As long as I understand when she starts sticking out her tongue, that means she wants to eat. When she grunts and wiggles, that means her stomach is upset and she needs to be burped, or she needs to, lay on my stomach to get some alleviation of the pressure. Or when I understand she starts, trying to rub her eyes, that she's tired. As long as I understand what those signals are and what they mean for her, I can provide what she needs. And in return, she feels safe with me. She's starting to show signs of recognition, like eye contact, stuff like that. It's really no different in adult relationships. We're having to learn the signals in the code because the idea that we have about how adults are supposed to be, or how relationships are supposed to go, they're only a starting point. The real relationship comes out of, I see you as you are, and I'm not asking you to be something different. I'm doing the best I can to show up for you. And if part of who you are demands more from me, I have to be honest about that. I have to tell you, I'll never meet that expectation, or I can't do that for you. But that's a kindness we do to each other, not a threat. Letting one another know about our limits, about our hurts. It's actually not burdening the relationship. It's actually giving the relationship what it needs to succeed.
Um, do you use EFT, Sue Johnson's, and the emotionally focused therapy? Do you use that?
I'm familiar, but I'm not trained in it, so it's not
Okay.
it's not the language I speak. I'm familiar.
Okay. Sorry, but I'm not going to ask this question. I was going to ask you to relate this to that, but if you want to do that, feel free. But if not, we'll jump into questions that people have sent in. So okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say again, that idea is our relationships aren't built on logic and rules. They're actually built on how we feel around each other and how we make each other feel. We can add logic and rules on top of that to help us organize. But at the end of the day, the job of your relationship is to help both parties feel safe and secure.
Okay. Type in some questions into the Q&A. I've got one here, and I've got one that I'm going to pull from our YouTube channel, but we need more than 2 questions to fill an hour. The first one here, I'm rebounding from a relapse. Prior to that, my husband wanted me to share struggles and feelings every hour. I want to help him heal, but I feel hourly check-ins are a little much. How do you recommend I reestablish connection and continue helping my husband heal? I related to your cleaning story because it reminds me that the employee must also express their needs for fairness to exist in the relationship. And then he notes that justice equals restoring balance versus revenge retribution. I like that. I like that too, by the way. So any thoughts there?
Yeah. So my first question is, why does check-in every hour feel like it's a little much? Is that too much for you? Is that too much for your partner? Is that too much for the relationship? Like, I would be really curious about what the baseline is. If your relationship before discovery was, we talk once every 24 hours if we're lucky, or if we want to, And yeah, an hourly check-in would be a lot for the relationship and maybe for the individuals in it. So I think first getting clear about why that feels like it's a little too much. Another way of looking at that is, if that's the price of security for your spouse, is that too steep a price to pay? I was working with someone a little earlier today, and we're working through boundaries that his spouse has given him, and a lot of them he looks at and he says, "I don't even think this is an issue." And he said, I haven't done that in a really long time. I said, okay, well, if that's the case, this is a slam dunk for you. Because what's happening here is your partner is saying, here's the target I need you to hit. And if that target was, I don't think you wear enough blue, I'd feel safer if you wore more blue. What you're really demonstrating here is, all right, I hear you. I take you seriously. And if I'm really of the attitude of I'll do anything within my power to help you heal, if it is within your power to give a check-in every hour, give the check-in every hour. If it's not within your power, be honest about that. Being able to say something like, I'm just guessing what some of the feelings might be, is that feels a little smothering. That's a lot of attention. And I know that's what you need. So I'm going to have to take that back to the drawing board. I'm going to have to figure out exactly where I stand on that. Because right now my gut reaction is I can't do this. Most of the guys that I work with, or because I mostly work with guys in recovery, is their initial reaction to I can't do this, or I'm not going to do that, is I don't know if I can, or I don't know what's going on with me that stops me from that. So I'd say explore that first. If it's something that you're observing, all right, I've hit the mark on this every time, and every time I'm checking in with you, you go from calm to enraged. I might need to find a way to talk to you compassionately and caring and say, this doesn't seem like it's real good for you. Is that what you're hoping to get out of this? Is, reasons to be angry with me? If that's what you need, okay, please talk about that with your support people. So again, get to the bottom of why you think that's a little much, and make sure you do your homework there on what exactly is going on for you. Because one of the most devastating things I see happen in recovery is for someone who's betrayed to discount their partner's request in any way, shape, or form. Because often the request is not about, this is what I actually need from you and this would balance the universe. It's, I need to know that you're listening. There's a famous anecdote out there. I think it was Van Halen, in their writers for their concerts. They'd put in a line about all of the green M&Ms need to be taken out. Like, we want M&Ms in our green room, but no green M&Ms. And they were notorious for stuff like this in their writers. And the reason why they put them in there is because if they walked into a green room, and they were known for like high value production, stage production, they knew if they walked into a green room and there were no green M&Ms in the bowl, that everything else that had been set up as part of their contract was paid close attention to. I think the repair process is a similar way. I certainly don't encourage the partners that I work with to, play games like that. But the point of setting boundaries and asking for accountability from the partner who's betrayed you, I think a lot of it comes down to, do you really listen to me? Do you really pay attention to me? What's going on with me? Does that really matter? Because when you were active in your addiction, it didn't. Pure and simple, your behavior indicated this relationship and you are not what's important to me. My own relief and my own addiction are what's important to me. And so, from a justice perspective, that's part of the balance you're trying to restore.
So, John, can we role play for a second? I'm going to put myself in this guy's shoes, even though I don't know what his shoes look like and what's really going on. But and I want to try to convey, because my initial reaction was every hour, oh my God. But of course, your initial reaction was completely different. So I want to put myself in his shoes and try and convey to you in a healthy way, and then you can tell me what I do right and wrong. So
yeah.
I mean, I grew up with a smother, a very controlling mother, and to me, the thought of checking in with someone every hour, it literally makes my skin crawl. It's too, like, I'm tightening up even just talking about it. So, John, asking me to I want you to understand, I hear you. I hear your request for me to check in every hour. I don't think I can do that comfortably because it takes me back to my childhood and my controlling mother, and it 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 you know it's making my neck tighten up, and I'm wondering if we can come up with some other way, and some other schedule for check-ins that doesn't make me feel this way. I want you to feel safe, and I understand your need to feel safe, but it's too much for me at this stage of my recovery. So
So what would you suggest? I
um,
like that you're telling me you need to feel safe, but what would you suggest instead?
maybe 3 times a day, maybe once in the morning, and then I call you at lunch, and then in the evening at 8 p.m. And we schedule a time 3 times a day. Um, would that work for you?
Maybe I really worry that, between breakfast and lunch is plenty of time for you to act out. To me, an hour is plenty of time for you to act out. So I really worry about not knowing what's going on with you for long periods of time. And that would be hard for me to go that long.
Okay.
Would you maybe be willing to keep your location on your phone so I can just check in and know where you are when I want to?
Yes. Yeah, and that was actually what I was going to suggest. And literally, that's actually what I was going to suggest was, how about a geo tracker on my phone, or at 10:15, I take a picture of my feet so you can see that they are attached to the carpet in my office. And that at 5 p.m., I take a picture of my feet and text it to you so you can see that it's in the recovery room where I'm supposed to be at 5 o'clock, or geo trackers and things like that. But yeah, so
Yeah, and I'll say in that role play that probably was a lot calmer than most people do it.
yes,
But the principle that I really appreciated that Scott brought to the forefront is the requests that partners make of their addicted partner in recovery. Again, it's a principle, not I need this exactly from you. Think about what a partner's going through, to figure out what makes them safe. A lot of partners that I've worked with prior to recovery, that whole concept of I'm safe or am I safe, that wasn't in their day-to-day lexicon. So they're trying to figure out what that concept actually means, what provides that for them. And most of the time, especially when something's really uncomfortable for us, we'll get on the first bus that comes by. So the first idea we have about, well, this would make me safe. We tend to get on that bus and we have a hard time getting off of it because we worry that there won't be another bus that comes along. So if, as the betraying partner, if you can seek to understand what's actually going on for my partner here, what's the fear, not what's the request, then you can help send bus 2, 3, 4, 5 by, and you can offer a lot of options that may work better for you and work just fine for your partner. That's the best arrangement in a relationship, is what we're doing works for you and for me. And a lot of the people that I work with on the betrayal side of things, their initial response to the boundaries and requests from their betrayed partner is, well, this doesn't work for me. I actually think long term that kind of accountability can work for you. You just have to find out how. What's this doing for me too? The ability to know that there aren't dead spots or enough dead spots in your day that you're going to come home to a really, really anxious partner. To me, that's money in the bank. If I know I've kept enough contact with you that we know where each other at, I very rarely come home to surprise us. And when we're not coming home to surprises with each other, we come home to opportunities to connect, relax, do the things in relationships that we want to do. So it really helps in recovery when your partner makes a request of you that you don't know if you can do. See if you can understand where they're coming from and offer alternatives. They're likely just going with the first thing that came up, but you can collaborate and you can find something that works great for both of you.
yeah, and I always think it's incumbent on the betraying partner, me, the addict, the cheater, whatever, to I mean, this isn't a meeting halfway. I mean, that meeting halfway may not be fairness, justice, and sensitivity right now because I have betrayed you. So I'm going to have to
Yeah.
usually go well past halfway. Um, but I mean, something that makes my skin crawl, it is okay to say, oh, God, that one really, I'm having
Well,
trouble with that one. And here's
if you're
why.
saying yes, if you're saying yes to a request that makes your skin crawl, you might as well just say no. I'm not going to do that because you won't. Um, if there's a fight between your brain and your body will always win. So like Scott did in the role play, be honest about what's going on for you, but don't let the conversation stop there. Scott's absolutely right. It's incumbent on the person who's betrayed to go the majority of the distance. That's the justice part. That's the rebalancing. Let's say I spent 20 years in an addiction and I was self-absorbed and not considering you at all. Part of what's going to bring balance is you have to know that you're in my eye, you're in my mind all the time. I think about you just as much as I think about myself. And that has to be a felt sense. I can't argue you with that because words are just words, especially for someone who has betrayed and lied a lot. I have to show you through my behavior that I think about you, I consider you, that your safety and security is just as important as mine. Because you went along in your relationship assuming that was there, and then you found out it wasn't. So to restore that balance, it's my job to prove day after day through my behavior that that's what's happening.
Yeah, I have to re-earn your trust because I had your trust and I betrayed it. So now I'm going to have to re-earn it, and that's going to take the extra mile. So okay,
Yeah.
type some questions into the Q&A. I'm going to go to the one that came from our YouTube channel, which I need to get over there. So this is in response to the Mother Enmeshment webinar we did. The question is, thank you for this. Both myself and my partner are enmeshed. I wonder if you would speak of being enmeshed and having an aging parent. This heightens the guilt as my partner worries about moving out, and that his mom's health will deteriorate. She's 86. When the parent has health issues, it can make it more difficult to separate. Also, researching enmeshment, I see a strong correlation with having a narcissist parent. Is that true? Thank you. That's a couple questions in there, but
Let's start with the last part of that question. The narcissistic parent producing an enmeshed child, that's very, very common because in an enmeshed system, the way the system is set up is to meet the needs of one person, or in some cases, two people, the parents. So it gets the parenting task exactly backwards. Joseph Campbell said that a parent's job, he said something like, once your children are born or once you start parenting, your life is now in decline, and your decaying life serves to protect this new and upcoming life. That's how it's supposed to work. But when that happens in reverse, of course, someone with narcissistic traits or someone who is narcissistic, they're going to arrange their relationships to support and serve them. So yeah, that is a big correlation. Aging and enmeshment are huge issues. You're absolutely right. There's a different level of guilt. There's a new level of obligation there. So some things to look at to help with that. First of all, just like with an infant, we had two kids before we adopted this third child, and we still had to watch all of the new parent videos in the hospital before they would discharge us. And one of the things that stood out to me this time is how much they stressed. If your child is crying and you can't soothe them, put them down and get regulated, get calm before you try to work with them, because it's safer for the child. It's safer for the child to scream their head off for 10 minutes while you're calming down than it is for you in a frazzled, compromised state to try to take care of them. I think with older adults, it's the same thing. You've got to consider, while you might be there in presence, and there might be something about that that's reassuring to your parent, if that experience is anxiety inducing for you, or you have a lot of resentment, are you just doing a good thing for your parent? There's elder abuse is a real thing. Getting snarky and getting neglectful is a real thing. And if you don't do that with your parent, I can guarantee that your partner will pay the price when you get home. All of the anger and resentment that you couldn't feel and express around your parent because they're too fragile, they're too delicate, you will take out on your partner at some point. So there's a cost. Those feelings don't just go away because somebody needs something from us. We really have to be in a position to give. And so I don't want there to be any mistaken understanding out there. The goal of enmeshment recovery is not amputation. It's not severing a relationship with your parent. It's moving to a place where you can interact with that parent solely out of love. So the compass point is no longer guilt and obligation, it's love. So there have been a lot of guys who have come through the workshops who have dealt with this exact scenario. And many of them arrive at the conclusion that in order to balance the needs here, yes, my parent has a need. I also have a need. My spouse has a need. My relationship has a need. I will show up and care for my parent when I feel like it. Meaning when I really connect with that part of me that has a caring gift to give, that's when I'll do it. I'll call my parent and check in when I feel like it. Again, not that I don't feel like it, I won't do it. It's when I have that, when I'm in that place of love and caring, that's where I'll come from. In a relationship where there's enmeshment, the child is required to be loving and caring at all times, even if they don't feel it. They're required to be attentive to the parent, regardless of what's going on in their own life. And that's damaging. And it's most enmeshed people that I work with are very caring and very sensitive. And that's a good thing. It's just been misused. It's been extracted from them rather than given. Another thing to look at with parents in that position is what means do they have to actually take care of themselves? So, maybe there is some ability to, put together a grocery list or clean up or do laundry or whatever that is. Assess those abilities realistically. Also, are there means? I watched both sets of my grandparents do old age very, very differently. And one set of grandparents, they did not want to leave their house. They didn't want to be old. So they stayed in their house, in my opinion, too long. And what that turned into is there was this constant request from the family, we need someone here around the clock. And, one of my questions to my parent, whose parents these were, is, do they have the ability to hire someone to come in and help with some of this? Because I'm good to go and spend time and be company, but I'm not a nurse. And that's not what I'm able to do. I don't feel good about doing that. And he said, yeah, they qualify for that through Medicare, but they don't want to do it. For me, that was a really clear, if you're not willing to do this for yourself and you have the capacity to do it, I'm being put in a position I'm going to resent. So know the parent's ability. My other grandparents, it was a hard decision for them, but they decided to move to assisted living. And those visits with them near the end of their life were some of the sweetest that I can think of, not because, taking care of old people is gross, because it's not, but because we really got to focus on what the relationship was. There wasn't any guilt. There wasn't any obligation. I really could have used your help with XYZ. Every time we came, it was, I'm happy to see you. I'm happy to see you too. And it got to be about the relationship, not about who was doing what for whom. So it is a difficult thing to juggle. Just know, like with so many things in recovery, it's progress, not perfection. Again, we're not looking for amputation. We're looking for you being able to ensure that you always come from a place of love, not guilt and obligation.
Yeah, and I just want to point out, and then I have a question. My mother was very narcissistic, still is. They are aging. My father is in the process of passing away, and my mother at least 3 times a day says things like, "Oh, what am I going to do?" It's just all about her. Even he's the one who's. But my sister lives 5 minutes away. I live, a 5-hour plane ride away, on purpose. But my mother, the narcissist, was very enmeshed and controlling with my sister, and she was very controlling and partnerized with me, because my father was mostly absent. And that dynamic still continues today. My question is, do people who grow up with a narcissistic parent Um, do we seek out narcissistic partners sometimes? Because my sister's first husband and second husband and almost third husband were horrendous narcissists, and I just avoid people. I just avoid that closeness because it just makes my skin crawl. Um,
Yeah, I think there is something to that, and in a lot of a lot of the literature, this is something that's noticed. One thing that we say kind of shorthand is that which we don't resolve, we repeat. One of my personal theories on this is everyone wants to succeed in a relationship, so we seek out relationships we have a skill set for, not the relationships that are good for us. So if you grew up taking care of a narcissistic parent, um, as as damaging as that might be for you, you are probably competent at it. And that's one of our needs in a relationship, is to feel like we contribute. So oftentimes, the way that partnering works is we find someone who matches our current skill set, unless we have a growth mindset, which is this relationship is supposed to challenge me. I'm not supposed to be good at all parts of this. We're supposed to grow together. Then we have an opportunity to um, pick from a much wider swath of people. But if your greatest fear in a relationship is failing, you're probably going to pick relationships that are very familiar to you. Um, if you're okay with some failure because learning and growth is important, you probably have a better chance at picking relationships that are challenging but good for you in the long run.
um, okay, we just got ask us some more questions. I've got one here, but we need some more. Um, this is a follow-up, I think, from our earlier one. My husband and I decided to maintain an in-home separation until full disclosure in mid-August. I'm in the guest room at night. What separation criteria should we agree to during and after the separation? So this is a trial in-home separation until disclosure. So boundaries.
Yeah, I would say the first thing to agree to is that we're in marriage therapy. It's only a therapeutic separation if the goal and what we're working towards is reunification. So the separation part is a cooling down. I think about it as like relationship ICU. It's an opportunity to take some of the pressure off, some of the demand off, so things can heal. But that really needs to be delineated between the two of you. You have to agree to it. So some things to consider during the separation is, what do we talk about and when do we talk about it? So for example, a very common one in the separations, the therapeutic separations that I facilitate, most couples will move from we talk about anything and everything to, for a while, we're just going to talk about the business of our relationship, which is, are the bills being paid? If we have children, what do the children need? Kind of one couple put it, so we're not talking intimately, we're talking procedurally. Yes, you guys are going to talk procedurally for a month, for 2 months, and then we're going to reevaluate how that went. We just want to give the intensity a break, a little bit. I think another criteria to agree to is, we're going to be honest with each other. So I'm going to tell you how I'm feeling when we set that up. So another thing to agree to is, when are we going to communicate? When are we going to check in? That's why I say get into marriage therapy. My couples who are doing any kind of separation, whether it's in home or out of home, they have to come to therapy once a week. They have to come to couples therapy once a week, and that's where we talk. We always start with, how's the separation going? Are needs being met? Because another thing in these separation relationships is we're trying to slow down the whole process and get the couples attuned to each other again. Instead of, this is about me and my emotions, or you and your emotions, this is about our coupleship space. So one of the questions that I'll ask all of my couples, not just the ones who are in a separation, I'll ask them, what's the status of the relationship and what have you contributed to that right now? So we still want the focus to be relational. We're just not, hounding each other to make it good right now. My mind just blanked on this. There was something else I was going to say, but I can't remember right now.
Do you?
Um,
Oh, go ahead.
Just say it's also helpful to agree on some set points that you'll reevaluate. Very rarely at the beginning of the separation can we say, oh, we're going to need 3 months of this. So let's do 3 months and then we're back on. I think you want to look at, so I tend to go in 30-day increments. After 30 days, we're going to talk about the current structure. We'll make any adjustments that we need to. One of the things that we want to look for here, though, in order to respect the boundaries and to actually have the separation do its job, is we don't make adjustments on the fly. Well, I said we're not going to go on dates, but tonight you just, you look so cute and I really miss you. We're going to go on a date. And we don't do that kind of stuff. So we put it on the table at regular intervals. We're going to stop and reevaluate. Okay, what do we need to change? What do we need to adjust? Because again, the idea here isn't permanent separateness. It's a cooling off and then a very structured, let's come back together. So, the couples I work with, I usually suggest you guys don't go recreate together at least the first 30 days. And then we would look at setting up like one date night a week, and that's structured. You guys are going to spend 2 hours together. You'll grab a meal and you'll have a check-in, or you'll grab a meal and you'll do something fun. And so we really look at kind of building that back together systematically so we can see where some of the problems arise.
Yeah. This one, they're waiting for full disclosure in mid-August. By the way, tomorrow at 2:30 p.m., Matt Wheeler is going to do a straight up Q&A on disclosure. I've got a list of questions. I'm going to ask him questions. He's going to answer. So anybody who wants to know about disclosure, tune in tomorrow at 2:30 Pacific, 5:30 Eastern. Since they're waiting on disclosure, should they put some boundaries around? Maybe the betrayed partner should stop asking until mid-August.
Yeah, stop asking and stop telling. Even if you're not in a separation, you're working on disclosure, because one of the purposes of a full therapeutic disclosure is to stop what we call a trickle disclosure, which is a little bit of information comes out here, a little bit of information comes out there, because the cumulative effect of that is generally more traumatizing than the one sit down, now you know everything. This is all the more, I think, motivation for the partner who's working on preparing the disclosure to do it in a timely manner, because you don't want to leave each other in distress that long, and you don't want to have this on your shoulders. This thought of this, there's impending doom. But yeah, definitely in preparation for a disclosure, don't be discussing what's going on in there. That defeats the whole purpose of doing it therapeutically, and it turns into a trickle disclosure, which is more traumatizing for both of you in general.
Yeah, my friend Michelle Mays calls the trickle truth disclosure, she calls it death by paper cut. And
yes,
it's really painful, and you just bleed out a little bit at a time. So yeah. I love this next question. Hi, I can't stand being around my husband lately. It's like everything he does annoys me. Any suggestions?
Yeah. So number one suggestion would be when you write everything he does annoys me. Usually when I see superlatives, everything, the most, always, that usually means there's a lot going on there emotionally. So I would actually write it out, quantify it. What is he doing that annoys me? And then I would take that same list, and I would say, is there anything that's on this list that is reminiscent of somebody else who's difficult for me? That's not because all of the annoyance lies within you and it's your problem, because that's not the case, but it helps you delineate out, what am I responding to here? Is it current stuff? Is it current and past stuff? Is it a lot of past stuff? It kind of helps why you might be feeling the way that you feel. And then the third suggestion I would make is make a list of truths that you need to speak. And first, I would speak them to your therapist or your support person and get help. Kind of putting that in a way that you might be able to share that with your spouse, because this feeling of annoyance, this feeling of ongoing anger, usually that's linked to resentment. And resentment is most directly dealt with when you stop internalizing and bubbling it over and over again, and instead you speak truth, and you invite change or adjustment, whether that's in yourself or another person. So those would be 3 good places to start with being annoyed by everything your spouse does.
And I would just come up with the 4th one. I'm a big fan of the gratitude list. Maybe do a 10-item gratitude list of things that you're grateful for your husband in your relationship. You're married. You've obviously been married for a while. There's probably some love there and some gratitude there somewhere, and it can help to identify.
Great suggestion. I think balance is always important, and the gratitude list is not to negate or evaporate any of the annoyances you have. It's simply to balance the picture. We actually have two parts of our brain. They're in different hemispheres, right hemisphere and left hemisphere. One is in charge of making positive assessments of ourselves and others, and the other one does negative assessments of ourselves and others. And one of the things that folks who have been through trauma experience is the two hemispheres of the brain communicate less. In fact, we can see in folks who have been through chronic trauma, the corpus callosum, the dendritic connection between two hemispheres, is actually less dense. So what the gratitude does in a balance to this is what annoys me, is it actually helps do some of that connection. Because the truth of any relationship is we have a lot of awful things to deal with because human beings are annoying. But we also have some things that we're appreciative of, and that's why we venture through all the annoyingness to do relationships. So it can actually help to integrate and hold a clear, realistic picture of the person you're in a relationship with.
I am 54 and have substantial childhood trauma. Still in betrayal trauma, bonding with my original abuser, my mom, emotional incest. I've been sexually acting out since 2007 with the same prostitute, but I cannot be sexually or emotionally intimate with my wife. We've been together 30 years, married for 28 years. Is my sexual acting out and acting in rejecting my wife due to my enmeshment with my controlling mom?
Quite possibly. I can't answer that definitively because I don't know who you are and we haven't talked the whole history and assessed, but quite possibly, especially when there is any kind of abuse, or whether it's emotional or physical incest. One of the things that happens in a kid to deal with the confusion of that is they separate love and lust. So I can be extremely sexual with someone that I'm not connected to, hence the I pay this person, and I can be really sexual with them. But someone that I'm intimate with and someone that I rely on and someone that I'm bonded with, I can't be sexual at the same time. That's what happens when a parent's presence is too overshadowing, too overpowering to a kid's sexual development, is the kid can't bring love and lust together, which is an ideal for an intimate relationship. Is I can love you and I can want you, I can care for you, and we can really get each other's fire going. So it's definitely worth looking at. I would say it's definitely worth untangling that. It's a very common impact we see.
Yeah, and as someone who grew up with, was partnerized emotional incest, covert incest, whatever we want to call it, with my mother, I compartmentalized sex and emotional intimacy, and they were not the same compartment. And I actually heard myself say out loud one day, before I knew I was a sex addict, I really can only enjoy sex with people that I don't like.
Yeah.
And I said that out loud, and my friends looked at me like, what the hell is wrong with you? And I was like, no, it's true. And this is just a perfect setup for sex addiction, because I can just compartmentalize it and I don't have to attach any sort of emotional intimacy to it. And that way I can enjoy it. The emotional intimacy was more than I could handle. So I couldn't attach sex to it. I mean, it was just too much for me. So yeah. Okay, last one here. I'm working through enmeshment issues with my mother. We've turned into an enmeshment webinar again. As I'm staying in my recovery, we are trying to create borders for the extended family to ensure we can spend as much energy toward recovery and healing the relationship. My mother refuses to listen to the boundaries. We have offered weekly updates only, but she continues to send text messages and making phone calls, knowing we are on a therapeutic separation. What consequences would be healthy rather than just simply amputating the relationship? So this is a couple that's in recovery in a therapeutic relationship. We've got an enmeshed mother who is not dealing with boundaries.
Yeah, my first question is, why are you offering weekly updates? And that would be something.
Yes, you're enmeshed.
That's something to examine. Is that something you want to do, or do you feel like you owe it? Because if you're coming from any place of we owe this, or this is placating, she really knows and wants to know what's going on, so we tell her once a week, we deal with less, wrong footing. You're still out of guilt and obligation, and that's going to be problematic down the road. So that would be the first option to look, the first consequence, I guess, to look at is, am I actually doing, are we actually doing what we want to do here, what's good for us? Or are we doing what we think is good for mother? Because as long as you're starting with what's good for mother, you will always put your relationship second and it will always be in jeopardy. Another thought, because this is not uncommon, that boundaries are not respected. Most people I know suck at boundaries and they don't understand them. So it takes practice. When it comes to that kind of contact, I don't think it's unreasonable to say, I've asked you not to do this. If you're going to continue to do this, I'll be blocking your number and you'll hear from me. You'll only have access to me when I reach out to you. And again, that's not an amputation. An amputation would be get lost, you're never hearing from me again. That's saying, because I can't trust you to keep the gate closed, I'm the only one with the key to a gate now. So I open it when I want to. You no longer have the ability to open the gate. Keep in mind that a big task of recovery from enmeshment is developing sharp edges. Some people have a thicker skin for other people's sharp edges, and so you have to hone that a little bit more. There has to be some bite to the boundary, and if the person that you're setting the boundary with is not getting it, bite a little bit harder.
Now let me ask you this one real quick, John. I mean, I have a mother whose favorite line is, "I'm your mother. I want to help." Here we are in a therapeutic separation, and my mother wants to help. I mean, what do I do here? What do I say to her? I mean,
what comes up in
can I be?
what comes up in my gut is, thank you for the sentiment, Mom. I'm only accepting qualified help right now. If you want to help, I would love.
My mother just bit your head off from 2,000 miles away. She just bit your head off.
Sure. And the setting the boundaries is not to placate mother and make her understand. It's to define yourself. I already have enough in this pot. We both have a sponsor. We both have a therapist. We're talking with our pastor. That is, there's so many people helping. We don't have room for someone who doesn't know what they're doing. But if you really want to help, if you wanted to drop by dinner once a week, I would love that. That would be stress relieving for me. I could accept that. If you really wanted to help, pray for me. Oftentimes those, and unless this is where you really are with the boundary, unless it's no, do nothing. If that's true, set that boundary and stick by it. If it's not, give an alternative that you're okay with. Don't call me and ask how it's going. Drop by some food every now and then. Pray for me. You can give your parents something constructive to do, but you don't have to take them on their terms. That's what you did in your childhood. That's over.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's just I really empathize with the person who asked this question. Yeah. If I would say I'm only accepting qualified help. That's the one where my mother just bit your head off. Why would you think I'm not qualified? I'm your mother. Who knows you better than me?
Show me a degree.
So, all right, we're out of time. Thank you, everybody. Another great session as always. We will be back in 2 weeks. Congratulations again to you, John,
Thank you.
and your family. That's awesome.
I will see you all next time.
Okay, we'll see you soon. Thanks, everybody.